Hello and welcome to this short video about identifying parallel and perpendicular lines. Now the key thing to remember with parallel lines is that they have the same gradient. This line here has a gradient of 3. I'm using y equals mx plus c. Remember m is the gradient, so the number in front of the x is the gradient. This line here also has a gradient of 3, so they're parallel. This line here has a gradient of 2. I know we've got a plus 3 there, but remember that plus 3 is where it crosses the y-axis. The gradient is 2, so that's not parallel to y equals 3x plus 10. This line here has a gradient of 3, so it's parallel. This line here has a gradient of 9, so it's not parallel. This line has a gradient of 3, so it is parallel. And this line here is interesting. I could divide everything by 2 to get y equals 3x plus 2. So of course that is parallel to y equals 3x plus 10. Now this only works so I can divide everything by 2. I've got to y equals 3x plus 2. So that is parallel. And similarly with this one, if I rearrange it, I get y equals 9x plus 6, and if I divide everything by 3, I'll get y equals 3x plus 2. So that line there is also parallel. Now we can get questions that look a bit like this. My line goes through 0, 5, so that's the y-intercept because it's 0, 5, and it's parallel to 4x minus 2. I need to find the equation of my line. Well, we know, if we think about y equals mx plus c, I know that c is 5 because it tells me it goes through 0, 5. I know that m is 4 because it's parallel to y equals 4x minus 2. Remember that 4 is the gradient, so y equals 4x plus 5. Now, in this question, I need to find the gradient of the line that is perpendicular to y, which is obviously different to parallel. Now, perpendicular lines meet at right angles. So if I have two lines that meet at a right angle, we'll call this one gradient 1 and this one gradient 2. What we know is that m1 times m2 is equal to minus 1. So the gradient of the second line is minus 1 over the gradient of the first line. So if I'm thinking about this question here, the gradient is 5. So the gradient of the perpendicular is minus 1 over 5. So just looking at another one quickly here, my gradient here is minus 3. So the perpendicular gradient is going to be minus 1 over minus 3, which is 1 over 3. Down here, gradient of the line perpendicular to 3 over 2x plus 1. The perpendicular line is going to have a gradient of minus 2 over 3. Now notice all I've done is found the reciprocal, so turn the fraction upside down and put a negative sign in front. And here, the gradient of the perpendicular is 4 over 5. Again, find the reciprocal, so turn it upside down and change the sign. Now the other thing we can do with perpendicular lines is identify whether the lines that we've been given are perpendicular or not. So I've got y minus 5x minus 2 equals 0 and y minus a fifth x plus 3. Now what we want to do to start with is just get this into the form y equals mx plus c so I can see the gradient. So the gradient there is 5 and the gradient there is minus a fifth. So they are perpendicular because I've got the negative reciprocal. 5 times minus 1 over 5 equals minus 1. If we look down here, again we'll get it into the form y equals mx plus c to start with. So y is going to be minus 2 over 3x plus 2, and I rearrange. So the gradient here is minus 2/3, and the gradient here is minus 3 over 2. So those are not perpendicular. If the gradient of the second line was 3 over 2, they would be. But minus 2 over 3 times 3 over 2 is plus 1, not minus 1. And remember, it needs to be minus 1 to have perpendicular lines. I hope that helps. Thanks very much.